Hi, I'm Dr. Faraz Harsini and I'm a biomedical and food system scientist by profession. I also used to be one of Alex's top Patreon supporters until he started eating animals again. I'm dedicating my life to food system transformation and I work in two nonprofits and I'm trying to change both the system and also the culture, especially in universities. Throughout this video, I will give you a lot of success stories. Please stick around until the end of the video because I will tell you about success stories of people who really were determined and made a huge impact by believing in veganism. And I hope that whether you're vegan or not, you find this video and my perspective helpful. I'm not making this video to debunk everything that Alex said, and he actually had some good points too in the video about factory farming, but he raised some concerns about veganism and I hear them all the time, and I've been dedicating my life to this for more than a decade now, and I thought that you might find my perspective helpful. I'm just coming from my talk at Brown University. Earlier today, I talked to a student who recently became vegan after coming to two of our events where we had physicians and cardiologists to talk about health benefits of whole food plant-based diet. After these lectures, he was sure that he can be healthy and vegan, and not only that, but also whole food plant-based diet could be even beneficial for his health. Once he was no longer worried about health, he came across one of Alex's older videos where he made a case for veganism, and that made him finally go vegan just recently. But of course, he was telling me about how Alex is no longer vegan. So it's funny that even when he's not vegan, his older videos are still helping people to change. But unfortunately, he's no longer a great voice for animals. And sometimes I wonder if he's doing more damage than he's helping. First of all, I think the title of his video was a clickbait. If you take out just a few minutes of that interview out, it just sounds like a vegan criticizing factory farming. He could have titled the video "Why Factory Farming Sucks" instead of "Why Veganism Doesn't Work." I don't know why. Maybe he's just trying to get more views and get some emotional reaction from vegans. But let's remember, he quit veganism because of IBS, which predated going vegan. But his IBS was likely caused by or worsened by eating junk food, if I remember correctly from what he said. To my knowledge, he never consulted a plant-based dietitian or gastroenterologist, and I and many other folks even offered help, but I don't think he consulted a doctor about this, and I don't think he gave it his best before going back to eating animals. And why do I mention that? Because I think that perhaps he just didn't have the courage to stay vegan under the pressure of society and bad friends. He decided to go back to eating animals, and everything else that he's trying to come up with is just a justification. He became vegan when he thought veganism was popular. His main point in this interview is that individual choices don't matter, and being vegan solely means that you're boycotting, and it doesn't always work, and we need to change the system. And I get that all the time. So are you gonna talk to everyone and make everyone go vegan? But here's my perspective. He either falsely assumes or implies that you have a binary choice here. You either have to change the system or be vegan. But we need both, and I encourage everyone to do both. You first go vegan and then you help change the system. After all, no one says that going vegan is enough and you have to stop there. And by the way, who makes up this system? It's you and me, my friend. It's us. You see, I'm originally from Iran. I used to be a human rights activist. I almost got killed back there. I'm also gay. I did LGBT activism. That's just another reason that I can't go back to Iran. I'm also atheist. That's another reason I can't go back to Iran, and I get potentially executed, and I can never see my mom again potentially. And growing up, I think every time I complained about the regime, the dictator regime, my mom said, "What do you think happens if this dictator dies and another person replaces them with the same mentality? As long as we are rotted inside, as long as we don't have wisdom, we're gonna get the same results." And I remember my mom saying, "Who do you think those politicians are? They're not from another planet. Those are people like us. And as long as we don't change, nothing in the system will change." Remember, politicians don't change the culture. They follow the culture. All they care about is to get elected and re-elected. They're not gonna go against something that their constituents want. And if we really try to change the laws without changing the culture, it's bound to fail, and it has been tried before, like trying to ban alcohol consumption around 1920s in the US, which clearly didn't work and failed. Remember, no social justice evolved and succeeded because everyone in society was on board. We don't need to change everybody's mind. Not everyone in the US was pro-gay marriage and LGBT rights for it to happen. Or when you think about slavery in the US, not everyone was against it. We literally went to war, but we eventually evolved as a society, at least in the US. So when it comes to veganism, we don't need to convince the entire world to go vegan. There will be a critical mass, whether it's 10%, 20%, I don't know, but it's clearly not 100%. So to claim that we need to change everyone's mind in order to have a vegan world and to stop factory farms, etc., is just ridiculous. Now get this, vegans are actually more likely to change the system. I don't think having 10 people cutting down their animal consumption by 10% is identical to one vegan, cutting down animal consumption by 100%. I think that by being vegan, you actually make a bigger impact, because every single time we have meat, eggs, and dairy, we are validating this massive system of animal oppression and exploitation. And every time that you reject animal consumption, you send a signal to the rest of the society that this is fundamentally wrong and things need to change. It's not just about boycotting. Indeed, many people who become vegan, they start changing the system. So don't underestimate the second and third order effects of being vegan. It's not just about boycotting. I know someone who became vegan when on a plane, someone refused to eat the food because it wasn't vegan, and they asked why, and that led them to become vegan. I know an entire family who became vegan because one of them saw a colleague at a work lunch who refused to bend under pressure, and they had to just get salad, and it was a sad salad, and they asked why, and after that person explained, this person now became vegan, and they help the entire family to go vegan. So every time we have the courage to go against societal norms, especially when they're so harmful, we send a signal to the rest of society, and there is a snowball effect from there. I've been vegan for 14 years now, and when I became vegan, it wasn't like you could have plant-based milk in every coffee shop. Now you have at least 2 or 3 different types of plant-based milk in every coffee shop. Burger King even has vegan burgers. In every grocery stores, you can find different types of plant-based cheese and eggs and meat alternatives. And it wasn't like that 14 years ago. These things happened not because the laws changed, but because consumers, people like you and me, make better choices. As simple as that. By doing the bare minimum and leaving some Google reviews here and there, my reviews have been seen over 14 million times. Oftentimes, businesses have just a dozen or at most a couple of hundreds of reviews. So if just a dozen of vegans bother to write a review, they can actually drastically influence that business. I give you another example. One of my students from University of Arizona got lots of signatures from her friends and fellow students and convinced the university to start a fully plant-based, fully vegetarian, mostly vegan dining hall. And now lots of non-vegans eat there, some because they care about the animals and some because of they want to just be healthier. After eating delicious plant-based foods, they're more likely now to be vegan. So she made a real measurable and trackable difference in her university. Now she's traveling with me, visiting all these universities and inspiring her fellow students to do the same instead of just sitting there and just say veganism doesn't work. So my point is, many people who actually go vegan oftentimes go further, and it's unlikely for someone who doesn't even believe in the cause enough to go vegan and they're still a part of a problem. They still view animals as commodities and slaves and still enjoy eating meats, eggs, and dairy. It's unlikely for them to really have the courage to change the status quo. It doesn't happen often. I personally have inspired some people who are now in the position of influence. I actually know an activist who inspired someone to become vegan. Then they became so inspired that they decided to do policy work in New York City, and their impact now spreads throughout the entire New York City. And who was the activist who originally inspired this person? Alex O'Connor. He used to be that person. It's a shame that instead of continuing that path, now he makes videos titled "Why Veganism Doesn't Work." It's not helping anyone. Just like carnivore people who sometimes even stop being carnivore and still make content that are just cringe. Every time Alex had a new content, I used to become excited. And now every time someone sends me his videos, I'm like, God damn it, what is it this time? So it's a shame that he went from being a real voice for animals who inspired people to become vegan and get active to becoming a distraction for the movement. Now, here is another perspective. If you and I understand that something is wrong, it's our responsibility to not be a part of it. If you and I understand that racism and sexism are wrong, it's our responsibility to not contribute to that, regardless of what other people do. If I just hang out with a bunch of people who are racist, I'm not just gonna say, well, I'm gonna become a racist, because I know it's wrong, I don't do it.
Do you think that individuals can make a big enough difference though?
First of all, yes, because all the vegan options that you have is because enough people like you and I made the right choice. And it's supply and demand, right? The more
more of us do it, the less of this will happen.
I want you to think about what you do to animals as your stance, your relationship with animals as an ethical thing. So regardless of what other people do, if you think exploiting animals is wrong, it's on you to do the right thing. When do you think is the right time to go vegan?
I mean, I would guess today, but like get involved today. Well, I don't know. I'll think about it.
Think about it. Take it seriously. Just know that literally if you decide to go vegan right now, you open your phone, you look up for like vegan options around you, you find them, you go there, done. It's not rocket science. But for those animals,
it saves their lives. Sure. Thank you.
When it comes to animal rights, it's the same thing. If we understand that exploiting animals is wrong, it's on us to do the right thing, regardless of what other people do. Another thing is banning factory farms is not going to solve the problem that I want to solve. I would like to see a world where we stop exploiting animals. If we ban factory farms, there are still so many ways animals could be exploited. They could be exploited in small farms. They could be exploited in rodeos and circuses and zoos and for animal experimentation and so many other fields. So let's talk about veganism. What does it really mean?
It's about targeting this mindset that humans have, that we have been conditioned to have, that views animals as resources and commodities, and just rejecting that and acknowledging the truth that they are actually sentient individuals who don't have to be exploited on our behalf.
Veganism is not a diet. It's not like being on a vegetarian or keto or gluten-free diet. It's not a lifestyle. It's a set of principles that reject exploitation of animals.
The fact that you're taking a stand against horrific animal suffering on a barely comprehensible scale. You know, we're talking about billions of animals raised in factory farms each year in the United States alone. We could just stop eating animal products tomorrow, and that would make a big difference. The market would cease to exist.
It's about not viewing animals as slaves and commodities. I used to say that veganism is about reducing suffering and animal abuse, but I think that exploitation is more accurate. In human context, what we oppose is not just causing needless suffering and pain. It's actually exploitation, because you can exploit someone without causing them physical or emotional harm. An example of that is stealing someone's artwork or scientific work and publishing them without them knowing, or perhaps stealing from an elderly woman without them knowing. In these cases, the victim doesn't really suffer. They don't even know what's happening, but they're being exploited. Alex beautifully talks about name the trait. What is that characteristic that animals of other species don't have? That if a human didn't have, we would treat that human like the way we treat animals of other species. And if we follow that logic and understand that exploiting human animals is wrong, therefore exploiting non-human animals is wrong, even if it's painless. Cows don't produce milk for us. It's for their babies. Chickens don't lay eggs for us. Sheep don't produce wool for us. I'm just as entitled to their eggs and to their milk and to their wool as I am entitled to your bodily fluid. I'm not. So reduction in pain and suffering is not really the only issue here. If I killed someone without pain and suffering and I said in the court, in my defense, that Your Honor, but they didn't feel pain, they're not just gonna say, well, in that case, you're free to go. Because there is no right way to do something that is inherently wrong. There is no nice and right way to kill someone who doesn't want to die without any good justification like self-defense. To say that we should be focusing on only factory farms is like to say we should only focus on slavery and not talk about racism. And not all slavery, just the very cruel ones. We should just stop that. That's what gets people to agree with us. We shouldn't talk about racism just yet. I don't agree with that. There are other things you don't do regardless of what other people do. So if I don't steal, stealing doesn't go away. If I'm not a racist, racism doesn't go away. I know it's wrong, I don't do it. Now don't take me wrong. Of course, killing someone without torturing them is better than killing them after torturing them. But as long as we have a third option, which is not killing and torturing and really exploiting someone, that's the way to go. And any way that we exploit someone, as long as we have the third option, would be injustice. And there is really no humane way to exploit animals. Ask yourself this. What is the number one goal of any business? Making money. And let's be honest, if it ever comes down to making profit versus animal welfare, which one do you think they would choose every single time? Once you commodify animals and you're looking at them as means to make profit, that opens a door for exploitation. Guaranteed. Like I said, this is not the first time we've gotten something completely backward. Historically, there were many instances of things we've done, and today we look back and we were like, what the hell were we thinking? And change didn't happen because everyone wanted to do the right thing. It was because a small group of thoughtful and dedicated individuals, which I hope it's you and me, decided to do the right thing. So ask yourself, which side of history do you want to be on? You know, sometimes I ask myself, if I went 200 years back, with what I know about racism and slavery, what would I do? Do I want to be a person who says, you know, maybe I just continue what I'm doing and hope that someone comes and changes the system at some point? Or do I want to say, this is absolutely unacceptable and I will do my best to stop it? Not only I'm not going to have slaves, but also I'm going to do my best to liberate people and educate everyone and really just do everything in my power to change things. And it's really hard to tell what I would do because when you're conditioned, it's really hard to go against the societal norms. But I think when we look back, we really appreciate people who had the courage to do the right thing. And I really hope I would be one of them if I went 200 years ago. And the test for that, my friends, today is what are you going to do when it comes to animal oppression and exploitation? Which side of history are you going to be on? And just to be clear, I do agree with Alex that we do need systemic change, but systemic changes don't happen in vacuum. You need people to support those changes. There needs to be a cultural and paradigm shift. That's why I think that veganism is the bare minimum that we can do. It's just the beginning. It's not altruistic. It's not being kind and compassionate. It's simply not participating in this system of mass oppression and killing of animals. That's all it means. That's why I give lots of lectures at Columbia and Harvard and MIT, because I think that these people are going to become the game changers. One thing I always tell my students is the first thing to solve a problem is to not be the problem itself. And the change really starts when you change. You can't expect the system to change if you're not willing to change yourself. And as future thought leaders, you have to actually lead by example. So I encourage my students to consider that we can't really change the system if we are not willing to change ourselves. And as academics and as scholars, it's actually on us to lead by example. And you know, when students in these universities come to me and say, yeah, the change is hard, if you know, we're not going to change the world, I tell them, if you and I, who acknowledge that there is a problem here, if we don't change, how can we expect the rest of the society who's completely ignorant and doesn't even acknowledge that there is a problem, how can we expect them to change if you and I don't change? Now, I don't want to be a vegan or a food system scientist who just repeats stuff that he reads on internet. That's why I do my own investigations. I live in Texas, so I go to a lot of these farms that advertise humanely raised, organic, grass-fed, farm-to-table animal products, especially dairy. One of my hobbies is flying, and so sometimes I fly over these farms to investigate, sometimes I go inside to take a look, and believe me, it's not pretty. As far as you can see, there are cows all the way, like the entire block. It's unbelievable how many animals are here. I also studied how these farms can increase the risk of zoonotic diseases and antibiotic resistance, and how they're a threat to communities that live around that neighborhood. In these farms, animals are born in captivity. The second they're born, they're tagged. They already have a price. They're already a commodity. Their execution date is already set. They're gonna be kept alive to be exploited, and the second they're not profitable, they're killed. Oftentimes, they're sent to the same slaughterhouse as any other farm. My friend, if you have a dairy business, you're gonna artificially inseminate cows or forcibly make them pregnant. In humans, we call it something else. And you know, they're pregnant for 9 months, just like us. After they give birth, there's a good chance that it's male or female. And, you know, now you end up with lots of male calves. And what are you going to do with them? You don't have a non-profit. You don't have a sanctuary. What are you going to do with male calves? They're sold to slaughterhouses. I've seen it with my own eyes. Day one, male calves are separated. They're already tagged. They already have a price of $800 in Texas, and they're waiting to be picked up by a slaughterhouse truck. And even in these local humane farms, you see the mothers running after their babies when farmers take them away. If you're watching this, you're on YouTube, go search for castration and you're gonna find lots of friendly farmers castrating pigs and bulls without painkillers. You know, as a guy, it literally just hurts watching, and I don't know how they can do that. And sometimes they say it's not pretty, but they do it without painkillers. They literally rip out cows or pigs' testicles as these animals are screaming to death. And this is standard practice, and this is not factory farms, these are humane farms. All male chickens are useless for egg industry. Even if it's a backyard chicken, they're not gonna have lots of roosters walking around. They're all sold for slaughter. Now eventually these animals that are being exploited for their eggs and milk either collapse or they are no longer profitable, and then they're sold for slaughter. So my friend, go to a slaughterhouse and you tell me if you find something that is humane, kind, and compassionate. In a slaughterhouse you find death, screaming, fear, and pain. And all of it so that we can have a chicken sandwich or put some of that breast milk of some tortured cow in our cappuccino, or to have some ice cream, or for some pizza topping. All of that suffering and death for something that we are not even gonna remember in a day. Is this really how low we are? And then we have to have these debates whether we should just ban factory farms or find a better way to exploit animals. Is that really the true reflection of people in 2025? Now, I know many people who had many excuses not to be vegan. For instance, surviving Holocaust. But instead of justifying not being vegan and making videos about it and saying veganism doesn't work, they started doing something and fighting the system. I'm gonna name a few people that I had the honor to work with. Let's start with Dr. Alex Hershaft, who is a Holocaust survivor, and I recently interviewed, and Alex interviewed him too. He finally escaped, came to the US, eventually got his doctorate, and one day he was visiting a slaughterhouse for his work, and he sees a pile of hearts and hooves, and he suddenly made the connection. He went vegan, and he didn't stop there. He founded Farm Animal Rights Movement and organized one of the largest animal rights conferences that I went there as a graduate student, and it really motivated me to work harder, network, and find friends and support to be more effective. Next, Ingrid Newkirk of PETA. Now, whether you like PETA or not, it is the largest animal rights organization in the world. It has brought animal issues in everybody's mind. And every single day I come across someone who says, I watched a video from PETA and have gone vegan. And many of these people never really stopped there. Now they're actually tackling the system. Now there is Sean Monson and Chris Delforce, who directed documentaries Earthlings and Dominion. With their documentaries, they really showed the horror behind of meat, eggs, dairy, leather, fur, and other industries that exploit animals, including the humane ones. And their footage is being used every single day across the world, and is constantly making new vegans because people watch this and they just can't have animal products anymore. Another person who's changing the system is Bruce Frederick. He used to be a lawyer, and now he's the president of Good Food Institute. Good Food Institute, or GFI, is probably the largest nonprofit that works on food system transformation from an animal-based system to an animal-free system, and to make really just alternative proteins cheaper, more accessible, and more nutritious and tastier. And only someone with the fire of Bruce Frederick is able to run such a big nonprofit. Or Cory Booker, a US senator who recently gave a 25-hour-long speech in the Senate. That's the longest floor speech in history. Cory Booker is vegan, and he's been working on a lot of initiatives that help animals.
Do you know you have just broken the record? Do you know how proud this caucus is of you? Do you know how proud America is of you?
I don't know what kind of food you eat on that vegan diet of yours. Yeah. But I need to figure out more of that vegan diet.
On top of that, there are countless CEOs and funders of the animal rights movement. There are countless other vegans who are now funders, major funders of animal rights movements, or big CEOs of successful plant-based companies. Now, it could be a coincidence that a lot of these influential people who are actually tackling the system happen to be vegan, but I think not. I think it's not a coincidence that they're vegan and they take this issue so seriously that they're dedicating their lives to stop exploitation of animals. You can't be that successful, you can't be that fiery if you're still looking at animals as commodities and slaves and you're just looking for a better way to exploit them. It just doesn't work that way. My friends, it wasn't easy to make this video. I'm on a tour and I'm getting somewhere between 3 to 4 hours sleep every night, and I'm very exhausted and sleep deprived. I work between 14 to 16 hours a day, 2 full-time jobs, both in nonprofits. And I do it because I have no choice. I've seen what happens to these animals, and it is my duty to speak up, and I do that gladly. This is the most meaningful and satisfying thing I've done with my life, to be vegan and to speak up and have the privilege to help animals. And I agree with Alex. I think the scale of this problem is beyond our comprehension. I always say, show me something that causes more death and suffering and pain and exploitation. I will shut up, I will go do that. I've been searching for something more meaningful in my life for over a decade, and this is it. I was a cancer researcher, I was a human rights activist, I care about so many causes, including the environment, but this is where I landed, because statistically and logically and rationally and ethically, any way I look at this, this is the biggest moral urgency of our time. Animal exploitation is our legal and moral blind spot. It's a moral urgency. It's potentially the biggest moral question of our time that we need to figure out, and we need to figure this out quickly. So I hope that if you're not vegan, next time you sit to eat meat, eggs, or dairy, you feel a little uncomfortable. And when you sit down to eat this chicken, you remember that this used to be a sentient being. They had a mother, they had children, they felt pain and pleasure, and we really have reduced these animals so much that when we say, can I get a chicken, we are no longer even thinking about a sentient being who suffered and was killed for that food. One of my favorite campaigns that we're doing in a lot of universities is Elwood's organic dog meat. So we go there and we say, hey, come get your humanely raised and slaughtered, organic, cage-free, grass-fed, open source, just random words we throw out. Come get your free dog meat. And you know, people don't like it. They get agitated, they get irritated. Even when we say they're humanely raised, even if we say these dogs were raised to be eaten. They had a great life, they just had one bad day. Apparently none of that is enough for people, and they still don't like the idea of eating dogs. And if that's the case, why are we trying to find a good way to justify eating other animals?
No, you're fucked up. It's you don't eat dogs. Y'all can't get a better job than this.
What meat do you suggest that we sell?
I don't give a fuck what you eat. This is bullshit.
So when you go vegan, your perspective changes. Now when I see meat, I see flesh of a dead animal. It stops being appetizing. Think about it. Donuts and cupcakes look like the most innocent thing. But when I see them, knowing that they have eggs if they're not vegan, I just remember maple chickens being shredded alive. And that stops being appetizing. Milk looks like this white, innocent liquid, but you know, when I look at it, I see blood, I see torture and death of all those male calves and the mothers who had to be artificially inseminated and eventually killed. It stops being food, it stops being appetizing. So do me a favor, if you're considering going vegan, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, is it harder for you to be vegan, or is it harder for these animals to go through everything I just described? And if you're against animal exploitation, then the question is, how many more animals have to die before you finally go vegan? My friend, I wasn't raised vegan. You know, I was force-fed meat to a point that I started liking it by the time I was a teenager. And my favorite foods at that time were steak and bacon and bratwurst. And I didn't become vegan because I stopped liking the taste of meat. I became vegan because I saw the horror and I just didn't want to be a part of that system. And because of that, I have so much passion about this, so much fire, that I was able to change many other people's perspectives. And now they are in the position of influence and power to change the system. There was a time in my life when I learned about the suffering and torture of animals in farms, and I told myself, sorry animals, I just love meat so much. 1 second of death for you, but for me it's like a lot of pleasure. And I was in that phase for 3 months. And when I look back in my life, I think that's the lowest I've ever been as a human being. That's a time in my life where I put my moment of my taste and pleasure above somebody's entire existence and life. I'm not proud of where I was, and I changed. And if I could change, you can too. And the biggest regret of my life is that I didn't go vegan sooner. And I changed because my friend had the courage to come to me and say, Faraz, you're a hypocrite. You're trying to rescue animals and then you eat them. And I was butthurt for a while, for about a couple of months. I didn't like my friend. And eventually was like, she has a point. God damn it. I need to change. And I did. And here I am dedicating 16 hours every single day to this cause because someone else had the courage to speak up and influence me. And that's the snowball effect of being vegan. Before joining the nonprofit sector, I used to be a scientist in biopharma. So if I wanted, I could actually make a lot of money doing that. But there is nothing more satisfying than dedicating your life to a cause as important as animal rights and veganism, because again, it's by far the largest source of preventable suffering and exploitation. I remember that I became one of Alex's top Patreon supporters because at the time I wasn't doing anything and I didn't know what to do. But now I do. And a couple of years ago, I started my own nonprofit. It's called Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, or ASAP. And what we do is we want to bring veganism and animal rights education to every single college student in the US, because I want to change the culture and then also help some of these individuals to be in the position where they can use their careers and calling, life calling, to influence the system. We organize events where we bring top doctors to come to medical schools and tell students about benefits of whole food plant-based diet. Or we organize lectures at law schools. Just this week, I spoke at Columbia and Yale Law School. And next week, I'll be speaking at Harvard Law School. And why law school? Because I think that many of them will become the future politicians and policymakers. And we're doing these fun events like Elwood's Dog Meat in all these universities, and people respond to it so well. Everyone is talking about it. The second we are doing these events, everyone in the university is talking about, should we be eating animals? And that's what I want. I want college students who are the future thought leaders to start questioning and investigating their relationships with animals and learn about the cruelty and exploitation behind meat, eggs, dairy, rodeos, zoos, animal testing, and all of that. ASAP now has about 20 chapters in universities, and that includes many Ivy Leagues as well as many large and neglected universities such as Texas A&M or Ohio State universities that are some of the best and largest universities in the US. And we are making veganism and animal rights impossible to not come across when you're walking in these universities. And my goal is to expand this to top 100 universities, and not just to make more vegans, but also to help vegans to become active, to speak up, and guide them to careers where they can actually change the system. So if you want to go vegan, or if you're vegan but you're tired of hearing all these excuses from Alex and other people, please check out alliedscholars.org. And if you're a serious student who wants to fight the biggest form of oppression of all time and you need help, I got you. Again, go to the website alliedscholars.org and submit a request, fill out the contact form, and it'll come to me. Let's talk. And if you know a serious student like that, please tell them about us and ask them to contact me through our website or my Instagram. Now, before ASAP, I used to donate a lot of my money. It seems like I wasn't the wisest with how I donated my money. But if you're looking for a place where we can actually make a meaningful impact in the world, our model in ASAP is tested, proven, cost-effective, and scalable. Now, all I have to do is to scale it up to more universities. So if you are in the position to financially support a nonprofit, consider donating to ASAP, and consider your donations as investment, because this is investing in the future of the vegan movement. Because at ASAP, we are making new vegans and we are helping vegans to get active and really start tackling the system with their future and with their careers. And universities are the best place to invest, because that's where we get to expose the students to truth for 4 years continuously throughout their college experience. Thanks for watching this. If you're not vegan, what are you waiting for, my friend? The right time to do the right thing is right now. Think about the animals. If you were in their place, how urgently would you want that exploitation to end? If now, then this is the right time to do it, after this video. And if you need help, just let me know. And if you're vegan, remember, being vegan is not enough. please speak up and use anything in your power, whether it's writing reviews, whether it's talking to friends and family, whether it's sharing your vegan story. Always use anything in your power to help us to end exploitation of animals. Thank you.